Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Tyrone Johnson from the best show ever. Andrew DeCecco, our in-house draft and Eagles, just insider, NFL insiders, been doing a tremendous job throughout this NFL draft process. Now, normally right now, we'd be doing educating the elders, but Silvana is slacking in Florida right now. So that'll come back next week. But it is, of course, the NFL draft. And I think there's a lot of things to talk about with this NFL draft, both with the Eagles, and we'll also look ahead at some other things as well. But let's start with some of the surprises with that draft. Let's start with one in particular in Shador Sanders. Now, this isn't about whether or not you love Shador Sanders or you hate Shador Sanders. What this is about is the method in which they go after players. And in my opinion, oftentimes black quarterbacks as well, if I can just be honest, but I'm not going to belabor that point, in order to hurt their value, which hurts their money. Now, in his particular case, he does have a rich and famous father, and he doesn't need for money and doesn't want for money, but he's trying to make his own way in the world. And he showed a lot of toughness in college behind a bad offensive line at times. He went from the HBCU in Colorado, say what you want, but no one was talking about Colorado before he arrives there. And instead, it felt like throughout that first round and leading up to this first round, the last couple of days, like people were targeting him, Andrew. And that's the part where I go too far. So it's not about him going to the Hall of Fame, but they're acting like the guy's a hardened criminal when if you look it up, he's never been in any trouble in his entire life.
Yeah, what I will not tolerate is that kind of slander, especially 2 days before what's supposed to be a celebratory occasion. It's the biggest moment of these players' lives. And you really only hear that about Shador Sanders. You don't really hear that about any other prospect. You don't hear about Jackson Dart. You don't hear about any of those quarterbacks or any of those marquee players. Now, the problem that I have, Tyrone, is that where was this conversation? Where was this chatter in February, in March? 2 days before the draft? Come on, man, miss me with that. That's the worst part of the pre-draft process, and I don't stand for it.
Yeah, and that's what bothers me about it. It's because you're treating the guy almost inhuman. I'm sure he's made mistakes as a guy that's 22 years of age.
Sure.
But again, forget arrest, no trouble at all. No trouble whatsoever.
He's a good kid. Everything that I've gathered, he's a good kid.
Everyone says that. So just because you don't like his father doesn't mean that they're talking about him like he's a piece of garbage. And also, I understand that anonymous reporting is part of news reporting. But if you're just going to talk about not how a player conducted themselves at Colorado, not how he conducted himself at Jackson State, not how he conducted himself on his pro day, but you just claim that you didn't like him in a meeting, well, who are you? Because we don't know who you are. You could be a scumbag yourself. We know that not everybody's opinion matters equally.
Or that guy could have been having a bad day,
right?
And he's taking it out on Shador Sanders. So what I don't like, and I think this is a stain on the pre-draft process, is there's too many prospects. Well, really, in this case, we're talking about Shador. He's getting his name dragged through the mud. I don't think that's cool. And you have to be able to separate Shador from his father, Dion. Shador is a good kid. You could say he's been put in a difficult circumstance. That's fine. But I don't like the slander that's coming out, days before the biggest occasion of his life.
And the other part is, whatever you think about Dion, has Dion been in trouble in his life? Is Dion a criminal? It's one thing if you don't like his personality, but there are legitimate bad guys in sports that we could talk about from time to time if we so chose. People who have been arrested, people who have beat women, people who have done a lot of bad things. We don't have any proof at all that Dion's ever done anything like that. So we know he's a Hall of Fame football player and batted 300 in the World Series for the Braves as a baseball player. That's the facts. Everything else is just somebody's opinion, and it stinks that it costs them money because obviously you want to make your own money. All of us have parents. We don't want to, have to deal with their parents' money. You want to make your own money, and he lost millions of dollars in large part because people were just hating on him.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. There's two other players in this draft that you and I have talked about, a defensive tackle and an edge rusher that had quote-unquote character concerns, red flags, what have you. It was very murky. You didn't really hear about specifics, but you're hearing actual quotes from anonymous sources about Shador Sanders, and none of it is accurate or doesn't align with anything that I've gathered throughout this process. I think he's going to go early tonight, maybe as early as the first pick off the board, and I think he's going to have a very good career and silence a lot of these critics out there.
Absolutely. Now, also, what's interesting was it seems like the positions in the first round were very different than normal. You know kind of how it goes. Quarterback is hit or miss. That's been forever. So put that to the side. There were two taken. Some years there's 6. Some years there's 4. Some years there's 3. 2 is not that rare. So that's not the issue. But all of a sudden, the emergence of the offensive guard And it also an early nose tackle, basically.
That was weird.
It's a different first round.
And how about the Atlanta Falcons giving up a king's ransom for James Pierce Jr.? I don't know about that. Jackson Dart going in the first round was a little bit questionable as well.
Yeah.
It was an unpredictable and really a fascinating, that's the word we kept using last night, fascinating first round because it took a lot of twists and turns and very difficult to predict.
Yeah, it was a different kind of first round for sure. And then, of course, we got to talk about the Eagles, where I was looking up what the national pundits said. And I found the one that was the closest to putting the Eagles and Campbell together. And it ends up being Daniel Jeremiah. So I have to give him credit. They thought they would get him at 32. Pretty much everyone else had him in the top 20, it seems like. Some had him, the Eagles trading up to maybe 25, 26, and maybe he'd be there. Instead, he falls to 31. What do you think about what kind of player do you think the Eagles got at 31 overall?
Well, I think he's a phenomenal player. Interestingly enough, he was announced as a linebacker. That was his primary position in college last season. If you watched, you would know. It sounds like if you listen to Howie Roseman that he has plans to use him as an edge rusher as well. He's a hybrid player. He has multifaceted skill set that I think it's similar to Micah Parsons. I think they're going to use him in that way, at least from the sounds of it. But that was the best player on the board, a top 10, number 10 on my big board as well.
Yeah, so that's just tremendous. And there's always one thing that I never know how to feel about at the draft every year. On the one hand, these young guys have worked their whole lives. You know, people start playing football young, and the dream is to make the NFL. So there's a lot of people at the house or at the party. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, how many of those people are going to have a hand out looking for something? So emotionally, I'm always happy for these guys when they get drafted. But I'm wondering, now how many of them cousins, how many of those aunts, how many of those uncles, how many of those adopted uncles and whatever are going to be trying to meddle into these guys' new money right away?
A lot.
And that's the part that always throws me off.
Yeah, that happens a lot. And you see all the family, and you said, look, tell them the Venmo is shut down. The Venmo is closed.
I got no Venmo. I don't got a phone.
And there are courses now in the NFL that they have these young players go through to make sure that they're being responsible with their funds, but also being able to say no and avoid some of those circumstances so you're not falling into, doling out all this types of money, and all of a sudden you don't leave yourself with anything. You spread yourself too thin. You have to be careful about that because now all of a sudden everybody's hitting you up. Everybody wants tickets. They want this. They want that. They're pulling at you. You have to stick with those who were true with you throughout the whole process. I'm a big believer in that. Anybody who's been in your circle from day one, and be mindful of those who kind of, they come around when things are going well. There's a lot of that, not only in sports, but in the world as well.
And one thing I will say, these guys got a lot of cash. I can tell you, I'm not a financial expert, but there's one thing that's always been a guarantee. If you buy the house outright and then you just pay your taxes, you'll make money on the back end eventually if you just hold on to it. It's one of those things. And I think sometimes what these guys end up doing is they do a lot of leasing and renting. And they say, if you want to lease a car, fine, because that's not an investment. You can get that back. But renting, they say, the luxury places end up draining a lot of these young guys' money because what they end up doing is they don't know how long they're going to be there or they're not going to be there, full time and all that kind of stuff. So instead, they rent a place in Center City. They rent a place down by the beach, in Miami. They rent all this. And then when the time comes, they don't have any equity in any of that stuff.
Spread themselves too thin.
Right. But if you just buy it straight cash, like these guys are getting multi-million-dollar signing bonuses.
Right.
You buy the house straight cash, a lot of stuff goes wrong. You still had a very nice home and a place
you can call your own. That's
right.
Exactly what I would do if I was a pro. If I had that kind of money, I'd buy my own place.
But out for them. I know they say there's tax advantages to mortgages, and there are. Not when there's 77 family members that suddenly you're paying for every single person's rent.
Well, same thing with a car, too. I would buy that outright. The leasing thing's not for me. I tried that out, and I figured out that that's not for me because the miles start to rack up.
They do, but they were talking about how cars depreciate while homes appreciate. But that's all those things that people end up running into when all this happens. So, and I think these are some of the things that I don't think fans think about when they're talking about how they spend all that money, how they blow the money. Did you watch the draft party? How many of those people got money?
There's like 76 people at the one that we saw.
Yeah, if they all just get $10,000, that's $760,000 cash gone. That's a lot of money.
And there's a lot of manipulators out there. Remember when I gave you a ride here? Remember when I bought you that equipment or this, that, and the third? And naturally, they're trying to almost guilt you into, oh yeah, I got to take care of him. I got to take care of her. But that's the reality in which a lot of these prospects have to deal with in the coming days.
Absolutely. So first round is over by the time you're watching this video. Of course, we'll be at the second, third, and then obviously on the best show ever. And Andrew also on Monday, we'll be breaking everything down on 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching our YouTube. If you want to help us out, go ahead and like and subscribe for us. If you liked what you saw, go right over here to our playlists and pick out whatever you want to watch.